Greetings. I would like to talk to you about self-awareness. What does it mean to be self-aware? That's a really good question. And probably if you're asking that question, you have already put yourself into a category of people that is beyond what most people actually consider. Being aware of oneself means kind of having a knowledge of what's going on inside of you. When people used to say, I need to find myself, what they're actually trying to do is become self-aware, and most of the time going about it completely the wrong ways. I like to look at it in the framework of using a SWOT analysis. Now, a SWOT analysis, S-W-O-T, is a business framework, but I think it works really well when we're talking about self-awareness for an individual. And that S-W-O-T stands for strengths. What are your strengths? What kind of person inside, as you think about how you face your day, what strengths do you bring to every task that you come into contact with? Are you a deep thinker? Are you a detail person? Are you somebody who just likes to move quickly and make decisions, or do you like to step back and ponder and think things through? What are the strengths that you have internally that you know about yourself? And maybe you've not thought about it in that framework before. And part of what we're going to be doing in this particular exercise is to look at you becoming more self-aware. And that means you becoming more aware of you and what you're bringing to the table. And in this case, we're talking about your strengths. So take a moment. Take out some paper, get a pencil, sit down for a moment, and begin to think about that. Write down the S-W-O-T, allow some space in between, and put down strengths there. And think about what are the strengths that you bring. Not necessarily your physical strength, but the strengths that you bring because of your heart, or because of your passion, or because of how you approach a task, or the way you think about things. It can come from your back experience, of course, but it's always literally contextualized by who you personally are. So those strengths aren't just your education, or just your intellect, or just your heart, but it is how it connects to the deeper part of who you are that makes it more than any of those individually, and allows you the ability then to bring that fully into light. So write down your strengths. Take a few seconds here and do that, and pause the video at this point and just write down a few strengths that you have. Think about it for a little bit. Ponder it. All right. Now that you've come back from writing down your strengths, we're going to talk about the next part, and that's your weaknesses. The S is strengths, the W is weaknesses. What weaknesses do you know about yourself personally? Maybe you aren't a detail person. Maybe that's a weakness that you conceive. Maybe you make decisions too quickly. That could be a weakness. There are things about yourself that, because you've lived in your body this long, you probably know about yourself that this is not who you really are as you approach a task. Some tasks you approach joyfully. You love that. That's your strengths area. Some tasks you look at and say, I don't want to do that. That might be a weakness area for you. Take a few moments again and think about your weaknesses. These weaknesses don't necessarily mean negativity about you personally or about how you're approaching life, but it does help you understand yourself and where it is in areas of your life that you are not as strong as you are in other areas. So take a few moments and think about weaknesses. Where am I not as strong as I would like to be? What areas would I prefer to avoid in my heart or passion? You know, some people are very passionate about one aspect of their lives and not so much another. So take a few moments, pause the video again, take out your paper, put down the W, write out weaknesses, and begin thinking about what's going on inside of you, about how you are looking at yourself. What are your weaknesses? All right. Now that you've come back from doing your strengths and your weaknesses, Take a look a minute about the next one, the SWO, and the O stands for opportunities. So write down that word, opportunities. Now, I like to think about opportunities when I think about self-awareness, because these are areas in my life where I might be able to expand myself if I knew myself well enough to be able to think, you know what, I could probably do something in that area that I hadn't really thought of before. And a lot of times this comes simply because we've not spent very much time in personal thought and reflection. But as you begin to take some time in thought and reflection, you will begin to see that how your strengths and how your weaknesses definitely affects your opportunities for you to be able to move into other areas, to expand the areas that you're in, to be able to take more confidence in dealing with yourself and with your friends and with your coworkers and your leaders and those who follow. This will give you a great opportunity to think about the future. I really believe that one of the things that we miss a lot in our development of self-awareness is we don't take enough time to actually step back occasionally and think about the future. I want you to do that. I want you to think about your opportunities, not business opportunities, job opportunities, but opportunities that arise from your strengths, your weaknesses, and who you are as a person. And contemplate that for a moment. And pause the video now and write down a few of those. And you're going to be finding yourself expanding on all of these over the days ahead. So pause the video now and do that. All right. Now we're going to come back and look a little bit at the last one. The T stands for threats. Now, in a business realm, threats would be those things that would have the tendency to detract from the business, to undermine it. For instance, a competitor who has moved into the area could be perceived of as a threat. In our vein, as we're talking about self-awareness, the threats perspective helps me to see that there are some areas of my life that literally have the ability to negate my strengths to some degree. And so that if I try and move into or do or practice or lead in those areas, I actually can wind up going backwards. I need to know enough about myself to know where I can lead, where I can move, how I can move, and do it effectively, and areas that I can't. Or I can also look at it from the perspective of areas that can tempt me into actions and behaviors that are contrary to what is best for me. And knowing myself better helps me understand what that actually means. So it's very important to think about threats. What is a potential threat in your life that has the ability to detract you from being the person you want yourself to be? And this can be all kinds of things. And this even goes a little bit into personal threats, personal weaknesses, and addictions, and those things which are contrary to you becoming the you that you feel and know yourself to be. Now, once you've done this exercise, and let me just pause here for just a second and allow you the time to write down your threats. So pause the video now and do that. Okay. Now, coming back into that. Now, you've done the SWOT analysis. It's a beginning piece. Please don't think that this is thoroughly done. But you've begun the process that is crucial for you to understand you. And self-awareness hinges upon this very fact. Now, there's a couple of scriptures I want to throw in here as we're looking at that. And one of them is Romans 12:3. And in Romans 12:3, it talks about not thinking of yourself more highly than you ought. This can be a real problem area for us. As we begin to self-reflect, we begin to think a lot more about ourselves. And in so doing, one of the temptations, one of the threats that arises in that is that we begin to think of ourselves more highly than we ought. And Paul in the book of Romans urges us and cautions us in that respect. In fact, I love the New Living Translation of Romans 12:3. It says, don't think you are better than you really are. I love that. Be honest in your evaluation of yourself, measuring yourself by the faith that God has given you. So when you have this honest evaluation of yourself, you're going to be better prepared to move forward and not think more highly of yourself than you should. Pride goes before a fall. We've all heard that proverb from the book of Proverbs, and it's certainly true. Pride can go before a fall, and in fact, hubris, another word, a Greek word for pride, has been the fall of many business leaders who began to elevate themselves and think more highly of themselves than they should. It's a real cautionary tale. But the opposite side of that coin is also a cautionary tale, and that is to not think well enough of yourself to believe that you have worth and value. And that also is a lie. In Genesis 1:27, we read that God has created us in his own image. And if we have been created in the image of God, certainly we have value before God. Now, I realize a few words that I'm going to say here is not going to convince you of years and years of self-deprecations and feeling bad about yourself, but I do want to encourage you to think about that. You have been created in the image of God. And in 1 Thessalonians 1:4, God, it says, God loves us and has chosen us. And that means you too. So on the one hand is the pendulum swing all the way over here that says, you know what, I think I am it. And on the other thing is the pendulum swing all the way over here that says, I am nothing. When in reality, we are all somewhere in the middle here as God has created us. God loves us, and God has equipped us with this beautiful human personality. And I know sometimes we can say that human personality is what gets me into trouble. But it's not really the human personality that gets you into trouble. It's the fact that we've not embraced who we are as children of God. God has made you. And because of that, you can become more self-aware. So while the first question I started with was, what does it mean to be self-aware? The second question is, how do I become self-aware? Becoming self-aware really begins a process, and it doesn't happen automatically. And here's a key piece. If you're going to become emotionally intelligent, you're going to have to apply yourself. Now, already, just at the very first part of this video, you did a little SWOT analysis of yourself. That's a good step. That's a first step in a process. But now we begin to think about, what does it mean and how do I become really a self-aware individual? And I'm going to give you 4 steps here that's going to help you in the process of becoming self-aware. And then we'll probably look at a short assignment right after that. Okay, the first one. The first step, if you will, in becoming self-aware is to take time daily for some reflection. You can do it daily. You can do it in longer periods of time. You can do it every other day or every third day or once a week. But at least at first, I recommend that you take some time daily and pause for a little bit of time, 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and set it aside completely and begin to reflect on yourself and what you have been feeling. Because people who are self-aware are people who are not driven by their feelings and emotions, but understand their feelings and emotions. And so part of this process is becoming to become aware of what's going on inside of you. How am I feeling at any moment? And I really encourage, especially at the very first part, that you even take time, even multiple times in a day, to reflect on your particular emotions and how you're feeling. So reflecting on that, how am I feeling right this minute? Am I sad? Why am I sad? Am I happy? What's making me feel happy? Am I ecstatic? Am I joyful? Am I miserable? Am I anxious? Am I stressed? Am I angry? What is the feeling that is going on inside of me? Did you see all my facial expressions just there? You probably saw some of them. You can see me smiling right now, so you can see some joy. All of these are indicative of what is going on inside of us. Now, sure, you can fake all of those, but the reality is that we experience emotions. We're human beings. God's created us this way. And because we are created in the image of God, we have to believe that God also understands that we have emotions. Emotions are great, but emotions should not control us. They are a part of us. And as we begin to become more self-aware, we become aware of the emotions that we have and better able to work with those emotions and become more in control so that they don't control us, but are part of who we are as we work together to express ourselves confidently in the world that God has given us. So reflecting, at least initially, again, several times a day, stop. How am I feeling right now? Why am I feeling that way? These are two very important questions you need to be asking yourself. What am I feeling? Why am I feeling that way? Write it down. What am I feeling? Why am I feeling that way? Do that every 2-3 hours, all through your day. Set an alarm on your phone. Say, okay, personal emotion check. And what am I feeling? Why am I feeling that way? The more in tune you become with understanding what you are feeling and why you are feeling it is going to have a dramatic impact, more than you can possibly begin to imagine at this point, on your ability to be the person that God has created you to be and the person that you desire to be. First step then is personal reflection. Now, this is so crucial. Take that first step. Now, the second step has to do with profiles. Now, you've probably already taken a profile. Maybe you've taken a Strengths Finder. I love that. And honestly, in my case, taking that Strengths Finder really opened some doors in my life to begin to understand me better that have allowed me to be much more effective and productive than I could have ever been had I not understood that about myself. Same thing with the MBTI, Myers-Briggs Personality Test. I took that, and it opened so many doors, and it showed me an area of my life where I was particularly weak. And I have really applied myself in that area of my life to become more aware of and responsive to that weakness so that I can become more the person that I need to be and want to be as I relate to people around me. So that test, the MBTI, the DISC, there are so many different kinds of profiles. Realistically, there's probably not a negative in taking these profiles, except that if you embrace them all too seriously. So there's a fine line. Yes, you need to take them, you need to understand them, and embrace what you're learning about yourself. But don't allow even those profiles to define you, because you can't be defined completely. Everybody is created uniquely. And these profiles will help you understand yourself better, but they will not necessarily define you. So please be aware of that, and then take those profiles and ponder them. Reflect upon them. What aspect of that profile contributes to your strengths? What aspect of that profile affects your weaknesses? I mentioned the one from the MBTI that I took, and it demonstrated a weakness in myself that I really personally wasn't even aware of. Because I was so confident in my strengths, I had completely ignored this other area so totally that I didn't even know about it. And when I began to ponder on it and reflect on it and finally embrace the reality that I had a weakness in that area, it allowed me to begin to change myself so that I could become more of what God has designed for me to be in my life. But that became because of self-awareness. So the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities then for improving oneself, and the threats that come from your personality. And that's also something you learn from these profiles, is sometimes your strengths can become a threat if overindulged, if allowed to take too great a role, allowing us to think more highly of ourselves than we ought. So I really want to balance that piece in there for you. So you're going to take time to do personal reflection. And you're going to take some of these profiles. You should be doing some of these profiles that I think that will help you a great deal. And the third thing that's going to help you as you learn to become self-aware is journaling. Now, I'm a big fan of journaling. It allows you to kind of get some stuff spilled out and processing your feelings and what is going on inside of you. Crucial for becoming truly self-aware. Find a way, find a place, find a way to do that, that you feel safe, because you need to feel safe. You need to feel like what you're putting down on paper is something that's going to be secure for you, but something that you can look back on from time to time. So I do mine electronically and protect it with a password. Because I'm paranoid and I want my stuff to be safe for me. You may want to do it in a notebook. and write it and just keep that notebook in a secure place. Whatever you do, I think it's important for you to be able to journal. Now, at first, as part of your personal reflection, you may want to use journaling as part of that and build that into that and maybe do it often. Eventually, you're going to want to still set a pattern where you're doing it at least weekly, taking some time to stop and reflect over what has transpired in your life. How did you handle it? What were your emotions? What caused those emotions? What are you feeling right now? Where do you feel like your strengths and your weaknesses played into that? How did your opportunities and threats play into that? All of those things can help you balance and become who you are and learn better about what you are and who you are from that. So journaling becomes a very important piece of this self-awareness journal. I have journals and entries going back years, and pausing every once in a while to go back and read those helps me understand who I was and who I am becoming. And it also helps me see areas where I am still struggling. So I encourage you to do the journaling. And then the last part of this whole self-awareness piece comes back to prayer and personal devotion. God has created us. You have been created by God with a design and a purpose. I know that sometimes that may seem trite or even not relevant, but it's true. God has a design for your life. God has a purpose in mind for your life, and God wants to use you, but almost always we inhibit God's ability to use us because we don't understand enough about ourselves to really be useful to God. So take time in your prayer life to ponder who you are as a child of God, and to spend some time looking devotionally into the Word of God and into writings that others have done devotionally across the years about God. These things will help you begin to ponder bigger truths. And as you begin to ponder bigger truths, God will reveal to you personal truths that will really begin to flesh out you as a person. The more self-aware you become, the more capable you become of truly being emotionally intelligent. This is the bedrock. This is the foundation of emotional intelligence. This is where you have to get it right. And I encourage you, take some time and think seriously about what we've talked about. Spend time on all of these points, and then come down to the final assignment, and that is to take your journal and to write down on a consistent basis, at least for the first week, everything that you're feeling, every 2 or 3 hours. What am I feeling? Why am I feeling? What am I feeling? Why am I feeling it? What am I feeling? Why am I feeling it? And spend time with God in prayer and contemplation and meditation. You begin to do these things, you will find yourself changing. It'll be subtle at first, but you'll be slower to respond in harsh and anger and frustration, and quicker to think about what God is going to do in your life. And you'll be able to go back and change and elaborate on that SWOT. And I really would like to see you do that. I'd love to see you do a SWOT now. I'd love to see you do a SWOT in about a month after you begin practicing all this stuff that you're learning about EQ. Once you do that, you're going to find that you have become, and those around you will notice it too, a better, a different person. And I encourage you in that. Thank you for taking time for this foundational piece about self-awareness.